No, we had to close it. We just got full up. So we closed on Saturday.
God. Where did you go, Pilar?
Oh, I'm just doing something with the folding things
Oh,
since I have 5 minutes.
all right.
It's 2, actually.
Here, I'm not anywhere else. I can hear everybody.
Mhm.
So it looks like we're up to 80 people, and the question will be whether we can go over 100 on our Zoom count this time. Christian is going to be nervously pacing until we get over 100.
You mean we'll have 80 little postage stamps? Size pictures?
Well, there'll be 4 screens. See the arrow?
Yeah,
Or-
the stamps don't get any smaller. You have to scroll to the right or left to see the 4 pages, but this is the size. If you're on a computer screen, I don't know what it looks like on phones.
Small.
You just have to hold the phone
Okay.
close to you.
You know, I don't know who you are. Could you tell us who you are eating your pizza?
I'm sorry, this was Rick Diamond. I'm waving at
Rick Diamond, okay.
Please.
Somehow, maybe I just don't recognize you on Zoom.
Looks just like always.
All the big hairs.
Except I'm eating dinner.
Oh, it's a big hair. Are you a tenor or bass? Bass, maybe?
Rick is one of our bass section leaders.
I vouch for him.
Oh God, I missed that. Boy, am I out of it. I know that guy.
One way you can tell on this who's speaking is that it turns yellow around the window.
Oh.
Soon, none of us
oh.
will be able to speak. We'll have to
Well,
all.
hello, everybody.
It turns
have to
green on
mute.
it turns
There
green
we go.
on
Hi,
iPad.
Ming.
Hey, there's.
Get started. And hello, everybody. I don't know if I was muted or not, but I'd like to welcome everybody again to BCCO's summer series. If you don't know, or if this is the first time working with BCCO, my name is Ming Luke. I am the music director. And this is an experiment for BCCO. 2 3-week sessions, each 3-week session on a specific work. This one is focused on Ein Deutsches Requiem, the Brahms German Requiem. And our second one is on Tip, It's a Child of Our Time. And it is June 22nd, 7 o'clock, and just 3 months into COVID time, I think we actually have an expected 180 people from various choruses. I'm going to see if my volume can be there. There should be better for my volume.
Better. Yeah.
It's better.
So as we're getting started, we want to give a little bit of time for people to get ready. So I'm going to talk about what BCCO is about, introduction of some people, and what we plan for these 3 sessions what we plan in these 3 sessions. If this is your first time with BCCO, welcome. This is an experiment for us, and as I mentioned, is going to be a little bit of feeling out on what rehearsals might be like in COVID times when we can't congregate together in person and we don't have immediate feedback from each other. And and where information can only go one way from sound from one device to another. BCCO, of course, is a community course, Berkeley community course in orchestra, and BCCO's philosophy is music should be available for everybody, but how that manifests is that we all have artistic voices, whether we've had tens of thousands of years of experience or we've never sung before in our entire life. And it's coming together as a community of all voices within the community that amazing things can happen. And we hope that this is actually going to be one of those things where we're going to experiment on what it's like to rehearse virtually from our homes, from our own living rooms, 180 living rooms all around. And so there are a bunch of people that are going to be joining us. One is Julia Morris, who is our assistant conductor, who is going to be leading us in some warm-ups.
In the other room.
Some, other sectionals. One is Paul Kakamo, who is our accompanist and is a fantastic pianist and has been leading us in some of our sessions
Okay.
and rehearsals. And then we are very lucky to have various guest artists that are going to be joining us throughout these sessions. And that's going to include people all over the US because we can, including like a German diction scholar from Salt Lake City, various singers and vocalists. And today's actually is going to be having Ellen Leslie, who is a soprano who sings with the San Francisco Symphony and has sung all over the world and has actually sung the Brahms Requiem with BCCO for us on tour as well as concerts. And so they're going to be leading us in some sectionals, some vocalizing, and some warm-ups. And so for these, as I mentioned, these are three rehearsal series where we're going to be looking sort of in between a deep look at Brahms. We're not going to be singing through it like we do for sing-alongs or some sing-alongs where we just sing through it once. Or it's not going to be, intense rehearsals like we do in preparation for a concert, but it's sort of in between. And so we're going to be looking at a deep look. These sessions are about 90 minutes apiece each time from 7 o'clock to 8:30. And we're going to be looking at the fourth and fifth movements specifically. And the repertoire for these summer sessions have been very carefully chosen because they might be applicable during our times, especially when we're all feeling the pain of not being able to congregate. And, as humans, that's something that's hardwired into us, is to be able to be physically in a community. And so I know that it has a lot of deep impact for us as human beings. And of course, as choruses who have regularity of rehearsals to meet together, to socialize, to meet people that you've maybe singing together with for tens of years or whatnot, it's particularly painful. But the Brahms Requiem, as many of you know, was written not to commemorate the dead, but to comfort the living. And especially the fourth movement, How Lovely Are the Dwelling Places, is this gorgeous movement in the middle of this requiem that has, incredible symphonic character to it, amazing vocal writing. But in the middle of it, it's smack in the middle in the fourth movement of the 7-movement piece, is this lovely and gorgeous, gorgeous work that speaks about comfort, that speaks about being in a better place. And we thought it might be a good piece to perform and work through, especially because music has this cathartic feel to it, being able to sing, be able to express yourself, especially within a group. And so I think it's a special work that we wanted to do and something that's been very special in BCCO's history. And then the second work during the second time is Tippett's A Child of Our Time. And this is a work that talks about oppression and equates it's about the Kristallnacht, which is the oppression of the Jews during World War II. He wrote it during that time. He wrote it during World War II. And he used, it's structured very much like a Passion of Bach, where in a Passion of Bach, you would have chorales being sung by the congregation, or nowadays the chorus, in a performance. But instead of chorales, he decided to pick something that was much more relevant during the time, which is which are spirituals, African American spirituals. And he knew that the audiences would know these spirituals, and as a result, it actually ties African. It's actually the Black experience because it was written in England, but the Black experience with that of the Jews and the oppression during World War II, and the The depressing thing for me when I do research on this piece, The Tippets of Child of Our Time, is that when you read reviews of performances throughout the decades since the 40s when it was performed, the reviewers say the same thing, which is, this speaks of oppression, something that is especially relevant to us nowadays with this quote, 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 war or inequity in society. And that has happened in every single decade. And so, even like 10 years ago, even like 5 years ago. And again, we say the same thing, that oppression and inequities in our society are something that are still present and that we always should be working towards eliminating and fighting against, or fighting for equality. So we very specifically chose these two pieces to try to, address topical things, but also with the Brahms Requiem, of course, speak to the direct function of what music is about, which is to connect us, is to equalize us, and to ultimately provide cathartic feel. Daniel Levitin, who is a cognitive scientist out of McGill University in Canada, the Harvard of Canada, has this book called The World in Six Songs, How the Human Nature is Expressed Through Musicality. And one of the things that he says is that there is no category of sad songs. There's no category of angry songs. That all of these actually fall into a different category called songs that comfort. And that even angry songs are songs that comfort, because their function within our society is for us to be able to commiserate with those feelings and thus afterwards hearing it feel better. And that's what I feel about the Brahms. The Brahms Requiem, again, was written to try to comfort those who are living, those who have had tragedy happen to them, those who have passed. And Brahms, this grew out of direct experience. Brahms was very influenced by Robert Schumann and his Robert Schumann's wife, Clara Schumann. And Robert Schumann, his last ever article that he wrote was about Brahms. And he said, this is a genius. He needs to be heard. Please listen to this amazing young talent, Johannes Brahms. And it's telling because Schumann's first critical review where he said almost the same exact thing, but it was about Chopin. He said, Chopin, gentlemen, this is a genius. And, he had a wonderful career as a critic, in addition to obviously being a pianist and a composer himself. But when Robert Schumann, a major influence and mentor for Brahms, passed away, Brahms remembered those words that Robert Schumann said when he first met, which is that you should use your capacities in the fullest sense. You should write something for symphony and chorus and the grandest of ensembles. And Brahms, being somebody who was very humble, who had a lot of insecurities and was plagued oftentimes by this emotional turmoil within himself, was very, very aware of his perceived deficiencies. And for instance, it took him 40 years until he was 40 years old to write his first symphony, the Brahms First Symphony, because he wanted to have his fullest capacity as a composer before he dared take up the mantle that Beethoven had left. Who was going to write Beethoven's 10th Symphony? Well, it was going to be Brahms. Everybody looked towards Brahms, and Brahms felt incredible pressure. However, the Brahms Requiem, driven out of personal circumstance, out of Robert Schumann's death, and then he started writing drafts of it, and it sort of went to the wayside for a little bit. But then Brahms's mother passed away, and Brahms's siblings wrote to him and said, hey, if you want to see your mother before she passes, you need to come back home as quick as you can. And so he traveled, and of course it wasn't like a day travel anymore. It was like a few days to travel across Europe and whatnot. But he missed seeing his mother's last moments and seeing his mother alive before she passed away. And as a result, came back to a household that had his family who was devastated from her death. And not only was Brahms very close to his mother, but also obviously very close to his family. And this affected him very greatly. And, I think part of the impetus of creating a requiem that comforts the living is born out of that experience. Is born walking into that door and seeing his family devastated by the tragedy that befell all of them. And so he wrote with great fervor, and this was not when he was 40, but when he was 33. And so this is considered by many to be one of the great, rather mature orchestral pieces that he wrote in symphonic scale, even before he got to writing his first symphony. And so it's a great, amazing work. It is 7 movements long. We're going to be looking, as I mentioned, to the fourth and fifth movements. The fifth movement was actually a late addition, and it speaks about a mother's love for a child, and it's a gorgeous movement that is obviously directly about Brahms's mother. And the fourth movement, I said, the centerpiece, the keystone of this seven-movement architecture of this work is this beautifully serene moment of comfort and sweetness. So, you know, the first and seventh movements are related. The first movement has this pulsing, almost anxious feel to it, pensive. And that same key, almost the same exact tempo happens at the seventh movement when you've come through the realization that of comfort and the love that we have all for those that are living. And it's a big transformation that happens across the entire work, and it's a beautiful, beautiful work. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to listen to a recording with Wolfgang Sawallisch, who is an amazing conductor working with the Vienna Philharmonic, greatest orchestras in the world. And this is a recording that has, we're going to listen to the fourth movement, and if we have time, we'll listen to the fifth movement too, but I'll probably do that next week. But the fourth movement has a lot of wonderful writing in it, and the YouTube recording has the music that you can follow along to. And so before we go through, it's going to be like any other rehearsal. Obviously, you know, looking through, we're going to be talking about things to work on for next week, just like any other rehearsal. Make sure you have your pencils there. You can hear, the sounds of the music clearly in your ears, and, you know, as good Zoom participants, you know, mute your particular channel so you can hear the music clearly, and so that others aren't hearing your sounds and everything like that. So I think we're going to have Christian, who is one of our board members. I'd like to introduce him to, who's doing a lot of the technology, but he's going to transfer over to listening to the Brahms fourth movement, Wie lieblich, which is how lovely are the dwelling places. So we can go through and run through that first to see what we're going to be working on.
So Ming, while we did pass 100 people without a technical issue this time, I'm having an issue playing the video, although we had it all queued up together. Would it be possible for you to click that YouTube link?
Sure.
And then if you clicked, once you've got that YouTube link up on your screen, if you then click, I'm going to make you a co-host in 1 second. Sorry, folks, for the delay. These things happen. So you now have the authority to share a screen. So once that's up in your browser, you can click the share screen icon at the bottom of your Zoom window.
Oh, look at that.
And then you can choose your browser, and importantly, click the check boxes that say optimize the audio at the bottom of that window, the share window.
Just 1 second. Share screen. Multiple participants can share simultaneously.
Don't worry about that. Let's see. Hopefully it says share screen. It doesn't give you a picker for different applications that you can share. Desktop or your browser, which is Safari or Chrome or whatever it is you use.
Let's use Chrome. Let's try that.
And before you leave that window, there's a checkbox near the bottom of that window that says something about optimizing audio and video. You want to click both of those.
Done.
And then share screen, and then you can click play on the browser.
Let's see. I've clicked play. Is that working?
No, you have to hit in the share button. Once you've selected your browser, you get to then actually hit a button in that window that says share. Back in the Zoom app. Does that make sense?
It's asking me to open security and privacy.
Oh, hell. That's what it did to me, too. They changed something. Okay, how are we going to fix this? All right, we're going to try.
Let me sign back on. I'll be back in a second.
Okay, and you're going to then, in your preferences, you have to then, yep. Well, folks, sorry if we have a brief delay. While we have a moment, a little later today, we'll be separating by voice sections. This is Christian Fritz. I'm a bass in BCCO and have been running some of the tech side of these Zoom meetings. After we've listened to this movement and we have some warm-ups and some exercises with Julia Morris and Ellen Leslie, we'll break out into sections. And at that point, just before we do that, I'll again make sure that everybody is muted, and hopefully then when we go into sections as groups of 30, 40, or 50 people, depending upon your section size, you'll have a leader, either Ming or Ellen or Julia or Paul, to lead your section, and they'll be the main presenter, giving you guidance for a rehearsal to come back together. There's Ming back.
And I've reset my my Zoom, so I think I might be able to share screen now if you give me permission as a
Yeah, coming up, co-host. Okay,
co-host.
now a co-host.
Share screen.
Make sure to click those boxes at the bottom for audio and video, and then select your browser.
Get to the right.
And once you pick the ad, looks good.
Oh, good. Here we go.
Okay, thanks, Ming.
And do I mute myself while he plays, or?
No, you can just hit play and let it go.
That's great.
It takes a moment to start the sound on this track.
Such a gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous movement. Wolfgang Sawallisch is such an amazing conductor. He was a conductor in Philadelphia for a long time, and we did an Elijah with him at once. And it was this just amazing way of how he rehearsed, because I remember him rehearsing the trumpets without saying a single word, because he would, at the very first rehearsal, at the very first time that the trumpets had this one motive, he looked at them very clearly in the eyes and just went bum, bum, ba bum, right? And then the next time the same motive came back, he looked at them, just gave them one cue, and then looked away. And the third time, he didn't even give any hand gesture whatsoever, but he just looked at them and said, "Remember what we do here." And it was this amazing moment where he just realized that the subtlety of every single gesture means something and had such economy to it. An amazing conductor. And so when we go through this, don't forget to mute your.
Sorry, Ming.
Okay, so great. So what I want to do is, if you look at and take out your music, if you have.
I think she was trying to say the sound didn't come through very well, maybe. Just so you know.
Yeah, my dog barked because I unmuted myself because we wanted you to know the sound was not good. A lot of us were sending messages back and forth.
Okay, great.
We're working on that, folks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, just like rehearsal, because we have over 140 people here, make sure that we, let's see, raise hands or do something. Okay, so what we're going to do now is just look at the music a little bit before we break off into sectionals and start looking at this as a whole. I want to have an idea of how we're going to be approaching these works before we actually go into rehearsal and figure out what we're going to be doing. If you have your music with you, if you don't have measure numbers, you should try to get measure numbers. This is all free online with IMSLP. And this music, of course, is incredibly, incredibly lyrical. And I'm going to start trying to play some of this very quietly. But if you can hear some of this, let's see, where am I in terms of my view? There I am. And so when we have this very legato singing, we have to know that these phrases are so great in terms of the connection that they have between the notes. And what we have in articulation is something that we as singers can do that pianos can't. And so where piano is a very percussive sound, where you hit single notes and they sort of ring, and we try to make them last as long as possible with the acoustics of the piano, as well as the pedal of the piano. As singers, we can sustain our notes throughout. And so the most important thing at the very beginning is to make sure that sustain is there throughout these entire long phrases from the very beginning. You know, that's a full, huge, long line that we're trying to do without any feeling like we're breaking up the line. Now, that's almost impossible to do unless you have really amazing lungs. But the goal is not only to try to figure out and give the impression as a chorus that we don't have any breath throughout, but it's also in between every single note. And so that we have crescendos and decrescendos that are written into the music, and that we also have in between each of the notes, both that are written, this is romantic music, but also that has romantic era music that has implied crescendos and decrescendos, even if they're not written in. And so when we go through this from the first few lines all the way to rehearsal A to bar 23, the most important thing is to feel like you have the connection of line, the lyricism that creates these long spinning phrases. Now, tenors, for all of us, the tenors are going to show us how we create this phrase for wie lieblich, right? How lovely. And we want the word lovely to sound lovely. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to make this leap, wie lieb. Like you bend into the word, wie lieb, tamba. And then, as we often do, in terms of creating this connection, what we actually do is a little trick, a sonic trick, and that is to create a little bit of crescendo, and that creates the impression that we're connecting. So when you have dee 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 crescendo, dee 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 dee, what you have is a crescendo before it's marked to give the impression that the music just spins and creates a little bit of forward motion. Now, there are two ways that we create sounds for the audience. One is our things that they're very overtly aware of. We say they can perceive, oh, crescendo's happening. And the other one is more of a feeling. It's not something that they would immediately identify and say, we know that there's a crescendo going on, but it's something that they actually feel. And so on the fourth bar of A, when you have that C for the tenors, die wie lieb crescendo li sind dein, before you get to the actual written crescendo, all four voice parts, when you have your individual line of this, are going to crescendo as well. And so that's what I mean by romantic era music. Romantic era music is one where personal expression and emotions overflow. And so it's implied that the composer is implying that the performers have their own artistic voice on top of what the composer has written in. So you add these little things to try to emphasize the intent of the music. Now, when you get to bar 46, meine Seele, my soul longs and yearns. From the very beginning, before you get to the words longs and yearns, verlanget und sehne, meine Seele, you need to hear in meine Seele that you feel the longing and the desire in those notes before you actually say those notes. And so the tenor, the timbre of the music completely changes. Instead of being something that completely floats, this is something that actually has more yearning and neediness. It has a crescendo that's much more sharp. It's much more severe. And so when you see at bar 48, bar 49, bar 50, in the basses, verlangt und sehne, verlangt, you don't see any crescendos, decrescendos whatsoever. However, the way the music is written, verlangt, ti 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 ti, you have in the melodic line implied the crescendo and decrescendo that's there, that you're reaching for those high notes. And there's a crescendo for all four voice parts as it gets louder, but inside there's these little phraselets. And so when we get to this music, and we do this in rehearsal, there's a lot of little things like this, these subtleties that are going to make a big difference. Going into B, rehearsal B at bar 66, mein Leib und See. When you have this music in the orchestra, you can see all the staccato notes, the forte pianos, and this music suddenly has not the legato connection that we have, but has more rhythmic energy, percussive energy, just like we have when we have the orchestra playing or the piano playing that's a little bit more angular, a little bit more vertical and less horizontal. And so we have a lot of these things that we're going to be looking at in rehearsal today. But what I want to do now is turn it over to, oh wait, one more thing. If you can turn ahead to bar 124. 124, which on my IMSLP Peters edition is actually on page 51. But what we're going to do for this, for the section leaders as well as for all of us, is to make sure that we re-articulate every single eighth note. And so that, again, this is music that is a little bit more bouncy, that has a little bit more joy and articulation than we've had at the very beginning. And so already you can see this is one movement that people say this has not the sort of episodic character that many of the other movements have, that these very clear sections. It seems like one movement that seems like a little bit more of all the same, but in reality, it's not. There's so much subtlety that happens from bar to bar. And so as we go through this is again the sort of in between for what a normal BCCO rehearsal would be, and then what a normal sing-along would be for a summer session where we just kind of bash through it and have everybody say, oh, that was kind of fun. I missed half the notes, but I had a great time doing it. And so what we're going to try to do is do a little bit of both. We're going to read through it, we're going to sing through this, but we want to have a little bit more depth as a way of introducing the work and these movements in a little bit more, well, like I said, depth. So I'm going to pass it over to Julia. Julia is our assistant conductor, like I mentioned, for the past 2 years, and she has just accepted entry to grad school at Michigan, which is one of the top conducting schools in the nation, and really excited for her. And because of COVID times, these things like this are fortuitous for us because we're hoping to actually still engage her next year, because if things are virtual, then she can do that from wherever she is at, even if it is in Michigan directly. So Julia, I'm going to pass it off to you. We're going to do a quick warm up, and then we're going to break off into sectionals and look at this work in more depth. Julia, all yours.
Okay, great. Thank you, Ming. So if we are sitting, let's go ahead and stand and find a place in your near vicinity where you can still see me or at least hear me. But find a space where you can maybe, like, you know, you're not kicking something if you move your legs or your arms or something. And we're going to remind ourselves of some good posture because it's been a while since we've kind of formally had a warm up and sung together. So first, let's just march in place. So pick up your feet. You can march as vigorously or as gently as you want. If you want to give yourself a challenge, you can put your hands up here and kind of hit your knees up to your hands to get a little blood flowing. And we'll do this for 10 more seconds. And at the end, let's make sure that we find a nice position so that our feet are flat on the floor once we're done marching, and our feet are approximately hip width apart. So go ahead and just kind of find that position, march a couple more times, and make sure that your feet are flat now on the floor and are hip width apart to give you a nice good foundation for your posture. And now bend your knees down and back up a couple of times, just like we're all on little escalators going up and down. So that's just a reminder that you want to keep your knees buoyant. You never want them locked, but there should always be movement in them. And then now let's take our hips and move them to one side and then to the other side, back and forth. And then around in a circle as if we are hula hooping and over to the other side, just to loosen them up. And now find a spot where your hips are kind of over your foundational feet, and your hips should be tucked in just slightly so that it's giving you kind of the space to expand your torso up. Let's actually do that and bring our arms up to the ceiling so we get a nice good stretch, and stretch up, 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 up. You are a houseplant that was placed way too far away from the window and you are searching for sun. So stretch up. Maybe let's search over here for some sun. So let's lean over to the side. Where is that sun? Who knows? So we're all inside. And let's lean over to the other side. Get a nice good stretch. And then come back up to center and twist so that your guts are moving. And then come back to center. We're gonna bring our arms down slowly. As you do, imagine that you are putting your shoulder blades into your back pockets if you're wearing jeans. So go ahead, bring your arms down all the way to your side and put your shoulder blades back, down and back into your back pockets. So now you should have a nice, good elevated lifted posture. Your knees should still be buoyant. Just a good reminder, I subconsciously lock my own knees all the time. So just to remind you, they should be not locked. And so you should have this feeling of you have your heels have this like line that's connecting all the way through your knees and through your hips and all the way through your spine, through your head and up. So you're expanding upwards always. And then another one that's kind of pulling you out this way so that you're open and ready to sing. And let's do some breathing. So just to remind ourselves, when we breathe to sing, we think we want to breathe deeper than we normally do when we talk. So to do that, you can imagine that you are either, like Ming likes to say often, you have a sack of potatoes and you drop it and they go down with gravity, but then they go all out around all 360 degrees, you know, that kind of, they bounce up, they go out everywhere. So another idea that you can think of is you have a water balloon that you're filling up at a faucet, and the water drops down, but it also expands this way. So let's just kind of breathe in and out at your own pace, just very conscious of how you take a breath, what muscles you're engaging as you're breathing, how deeply you're breathing. So go ahead and take a nice deep breath in, and then exhale. Check in with yourself. Did that feel shallow? Did that feel deep? See if you can get a little deeper this time. Nice deep breath in. And then exhale. Okay, and now we'll kind of get into the nitty-gritty details of that. So go ahead and place one hand kind of on your abdomen, right kind of below your belly button, and take your other hand and place it at the bottom of your rib cage. So my index finger is right at my last rib. And we're gonna take some nice deep breaths. So we want to go down and out as opposed to like up and in. So when we breathe, you don't wanna go, right? You wanna go down and out instead. So see if, as we breathe in, we'll breathe in for 4 beats and then out for 4 beats. And as we do, imagine that you are breathing into both of your hands. So both of your hands should be expanding with your belly and your side and your back. So here we go. Nice deep breath in. We'll breathe in for 1, 2, 3, 4, and out. 2, 3, 4. Nice and deep. In again. 2, 3, 4, and out. And again, and in, 2, 3, 4, and out. And in. Last one. And out. 2, 3, 4. Excellent. And then we'll do one more breathing exercise. So we'll breathe in for 2 beats, so a shorter amount of time, but we still want that same deep breath. So we don't, just because it's a shorter, like fewer beats, you don't want to kind of gasp it in. Still nice controlled engagement and breath in over those 2 beats. And then we'll hiss out on an S for 8 beats. So it'll look like this. And then we'll repeat and do that a couple of times. But make sure that your hiss is engaged, that you're not using your pressure with your mouth to create the hiss, but it's coming from your support and your diaphragm, and you're using those same breathing kind of engagement muscles that you're using to create the hiss as well. So it's coming from down here, not from up here. So here we go. Ready? Breathe in. Off. Then breathe in. Off. Last one. Breathe in. 1, 2, and hiss. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Off. Great. I'm going to sit now because I have my piano here, but please stay standing if you can, and we will continue with turning our breathing into some vibrations. So exciting. So we'll start here, and still thinking about your breath and how to sustain and connect your breath and keep it one long spinning exhalation. Start with a nice comfortable hum, but on an NG. So you're closing your soft palate with the back of your mouth with your tongue, and we'll sing nice and controlled, but think about sustaining your breath more than you're thinking about changing your pitches. So thinking about the phrasing. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. Last one. Great. Okay. Oop. Okay. So now we will sing a favorite of ours. Nee, boy, nee, boy, nee, boy, nee, boy, nee. And we're looking for kind of a warm V sound when you get to it. Nee, voo. So really kind of lean into the V. As you'll notice, we'll need that when we sing the 4th movement of the Brahms. And we also want to make sure that you're finding your vowels immediately. So there's no gliding or diphthong creation between or creating extra vowels. So instead of nee boo, nee view or something extra vowels, we just want E and oo. Nee So see if you can make that switch really quickly. Here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. Ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni. Ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni. Ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni. Ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni. Ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni. Ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni. Last one. Ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni, bo, ni. Great, and then we'll kind of continue that idea with the vowels, with a vowel flow. So we'll sing through all of our vowels. We'll sing E, A, O. And same idea. So instead of thinking like between each vowel, like you're using a dimmer switch to like turn the lights on slowly and off, instead of singing E, A, O, instead of kind of gliding between each vowel, see if you can make that switch immediately with your tongue and your mouth position. E, A, O. But it still has that forward momentum and sustain with your breath. So keep your breath nice and constant while you're changing your vowels really rather strictly and kind of immediately. Okay, here we go. Ready? 2, 3, 4. E, A, O. E, A, O. Stop us here. We're going to keep going a couple more steps up. But as we get higher, we're kind of in the range where you want to start modifying your vowels to make space and make those higher notes easier. So instead of thinking instead of thinking closed, open up your mouth, raise your soft palate in the back, create a little bit more space. So everyone kind of make that yawn space in your mouth as you breathe in to create space for It'll make those higher notes easier. So let's continue. We'll start here again. Here we go. Nice deep breath. Remind yourself to always breathe to prepare yourself before a phrase. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, and. Just do one more exercise, and then I believe we'll turn it over to Ellen afterwards for a little bit more work for warm-ups and things. So we'll start with a really quick scale. So this should also be really familiar. And we'll go a little bit higher for this one. So here we go. 1, 2, ready, and. Okay, and now I will turn it over to Ellen, who I believe also has a few vocal exercises for us.
Great.
Let's look at my hair. I am so excited to have Ellen Leslie, who's going to be joining us to do some vocalizing that's more specific to this movement of Brahms and to singing romantic music in general. You know, there's our natural way of sustaining long lines is actually very difficult with our voices. And some of these leaps are very difficult as well. Ellen Leslie, as many of you know, is a soprano that's in the area that's won the Met competition in the region, I think a few times, or at least once most recently. And she is married to Eric Choate, who used to be an assistant conductor for BCCO, but now is artistic director for the San Francisco Boys Chorus. And so it's a power artistic couple in the Bay Area that we're really excited and proud of. But Ellen Leslie has sung all over the world, and as I mentioned, is a member of the San Francisco Symphony Chorus, but also, I think, soloed with them and soloed with many groups around the Bay Area, as I mentioned, across the US and world. So I'm going to pass it along to Ellen, who's going to do more specific vocalizing, specific to this movement of the Brahms. So Ellen, welcome.
Thank you. Can you see and hear me? Hopefully.
Yes, indeed.
Okay, great. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Ellen Leslie. I'm so glad to be here today. Is the video not working?
No, both are working just fine.
Oh, okay, great. All right. So I am not doing vocalizing per se, but I wanted to kind of talk about some of these vocal challenges that come along with all of this music that Brahms presents to us. This is not easy music, and there are some specific things in this movement, especially, like Ming said, the long lines and the large leaps and everything. Let me just make sure this is working. Okay, great. So the first thing I want to talk about is legato. Brahms writes these super long, stretchy, flowy lines. And how do we approach those? I mean, even just the beginning line, Wie lieblich sind deine Wohnungen, Herr Zebaoth, Herr Zebaoth. That's long, and it's way higher than that. And a lot of this movement, for a lot of the voice parts, is in the passaggio land. It's not a super comfortable range to sing in, so it's already difficult. And added on to that, this legato, it's hard. So in terms of breath, everyone's breath capacity is, of course, different. So I would encourage you first to figure out what your personal limit is right now, so that if you do need to stagger breathe, you can plan that out in advance. There's no shame in breathing. I mean, if you can make it all the way through these phrases, great. That's wonderful, but they're really long, and there's not always a convenient breath, like a rest or a calm, or where it's natural to breathe. So I always make a plan right in the stagger breathing. Mine is just a little check mark that I put in parentheses. Plan it for somewhere unexpected where you think your neighbor is not going to breathe. You could even skip a word, as long as you're not skipping the same word as the person next to you. No video, okay. So just kind of watch for that and go ahead and make the plan before you even begin. Just kind of sing through the lines to yourself, figure out, okay, I can't make it through. Where can I drop a word? Where can I sneak a breath, etc. But plan it out first, and it'll make it a lot easier for you later. So whether you plan to breathe or not, how can you set yourself up for success in these long lines? And the key is to pace your breath. You don't want to give too much too soon. You have a limited capacity of air, and if you let it all out in the very beginning, then you're not going to make it all the way through that line. So these long legato lines are all about breath efficiency and spinning that line of air evenly. So of course, you're always going to begin with a low breath, like we just practiced with Julia. So when you hear legato, it can be tempting to smooth things out by making the consonants a little bit syrupy, like wie lieblich, but sometimes that's appropriate, and if it is, then maybe Ming will ask for it. But I think that we should try the opposite. Try keeping the consonants light, especially when you're practicing this music for yourself. So imagine that the legato of the line is a clothesline. And all of the consonants are clothespins, not big clothespins, just like those tiny little ones on this clothesline of the legato. So you can practice your legato in this piece and in any piece of music by getting rid of the consonants altogether. Take off all the clothespins. So this will get you really hyper aware of your vowel shaping and will help keep them really clean. So we can avoid, like Julia talked about, doing that kind of wah, wah, changing between vowels. So for example, the opening line would be E, I, O, A, O, et cetera, et cetera. So keep the jaw nice and slack while you're doing it so that you can really feel those subtle shifts in your tongue and in your lips and in your soft palate as you're changing those vowel positions. So you can add the consonants back in very lightly to begin. So again, keeping the jaw really nice and light. And then you can add them back in a little more after that and a little more after that. But I think you'll find that if you sing something through on the vowels first, then you'll find this really great evenness of line that will make it easier for you and more legato when you do add those consonants back in. You can also just practice speaking it with your jaw really slack. Etc., etc. Oh, should I move position? Is that better? Maybe. Okay. Great. So as far as conserving the breath and just thinking, how am I going to make it through this crazy long phrase? Try not to start the phrases with too much force. So if you're asked to, if there's an accent or something, then of course you're going to want to give that a little punch. But we don't really have that in this movement. It's all of these really long hairpin lines. So if you start it really gently and with less breath than you think you need, and then just blossom through it, then that will not only help with conserving the breath, but will also help create that natural dynamic hairpin as well. And you can practice this, we can do it right now, on hissing, or I prefer an F sound. So first imagine that you are singing forte, but you're just exhaling on an F. And feel all of that pressure. And now try doing it piano. And now try putting a hairpin on it. Start the F very gently, blossom through it, then taper at the end. And you'll see that the hairpin actually kind of follows the natural line of you running out of breath at the end. And in terms of building up your breath support, just doing those exercises, doing those kinds of things that Julia does during warm-ups will automatically help, get your mechanism in good shape. And in terms of making it to the end of the phrase, if you're thinking, okay, I don't want to breathe, I know that I can make it to the end of this phrase, how can I give myself that extra little push on the gas? And I would actually try 99% of the time, if you're running out of breath a little too early, it has to do with your posture. So the second you find yourself running out of breath, roll your shoulders back a little bit and think about, I don't like using the word push, but just putting a little more pressure on your tummy really, really low. And that'll just be like that tiny little extra push on the gas. So that's legato. Those are some things that you can do to work on that. Again, I would say practice this whole movement. You could even do it. I had a teacher who would have me do every single piece I ever picked up on E's, A's, Ah's, and Nah's. So before I even got to put any words or any real consonants in, you do it just on E, A, Ah, Nah. So then you add in the N. So you can even try that. And that is a great way to build that legato into a piece. So the second thing that I wanted to talk about with this piece is large leaps, because they are all over this movement. And every single voice part has some iteration of, let's see, the beginning, this gorgeous tenor moment. This part makes me want to be a tenor. Wie lieblich sind deine. So good. So that's a sixth. And that is tricky. And there are these leaps all over the place. So for any large leap, how can you approach that leap in a way that's going to set you up for success, not only for being in tune in the leap and making it sound good, but then also setting yourself up for success for the rest of the line? And it all has to do with creating space. So first, when you're looking at a line of music that has a big leap like that, so that's the highest note in that little chunk, in those couple measures. So before you even sing the V on the bottom, sing the highest note in the phrase first. Find out how much space you need there. And if it's high in your range, then you're probably going to need to modify the vowel. So first sing that higher note, and then without collapsing any position, find the exact jaw position, the exact vowel modification that you need for the top part of the leap, and then keep that exact position and go back to the bottom. So that you're changing nothing. Because if you start in the lower part of the phrase and then try to drag that space and the lack of space rather up into the top part of the leap, then it's just not going to come out very well. I mean, sopranos, everything above the staff is just kind of going to be anyway. So just set yourself up in a nice tall position. So that's not to say that you should completely obscure the vowel. You know, you want it to be somewhat clear. Anyway, another trick that you can do is to leave the consonant behind. And I hope this doesn't go against anything that Ming said, because again, you should always follow what the conductor wants. But I find it really a lot easier to leave the consonant on the lower part of the leap. So in this case, that would mean singing vil, iblich. So if you try to sing the L way up at the top, it's going to go vi-li. When you have to close to a consonant like that, then it's going to collapse your mechanism. And you've already, just tried to open it up so that you can get up to that high note. If you have to open up to get to the high note and then immediately collapse again to get on the consonant, then it's going to squash everything that you just did. So that's not to say that you should sing it in a really separated way, like vil iblich, vil. Make it really subtle, but I find that that really, really helps get those leaps clean. Those leaps are going to feel different depending on where they sit in your vocal range, so it's going to be different for everyone in different parts of the piece. But I recommend practicing leaps. That's something that you can do at home. Just pick any interval you want. In this case, a sixth. My Bonnie lies over the ocean. And just kind of waffle around in different parts of your range. On different vowels. And just as you're in the shower or in the car or wherever you like, practicing leaps is a great thing and helps you get to know your voice and the modifications that you need to make in different parts of it. Great. So I think those are the two biggest challenges. I'm going to talk some more about the sopranos in my sectional about some other things, but I just wanted to give you a few tips and tricks so that you can look ahead in the piece and troubleshoot.
That's great. Thank you so much, Ellen. And so this is a time we're actually going to do some more singing. And so because it is difficult, obviously, for all four voice parts and all 148 of us to try to sing together and have a cohesive whole, what we're doing in virtual sessions like this is to actually break up into smaller groups. And even though the smaller groups are around 40 to 60 people, I think it's going to be an opportunity for us to actually dive into the music and really feel like we're working on something and working towards something. And so with Christian's help and others, we're going to break off into sectionals. Ellen is going to be working with the sopranos. Julia is going to be working with the altos. I'm going to be working with the tenors, I believe, and Paul's going to be working the basses. But give us a minute while we try to migrate ourselves over into smaller groups, or rather, large groups, and we will start rehearsing in earnest and be back here at 8:30.
So this is Christian Fritza. I'm organizing this Zoom thing. There are a few of you who aren't in a breakout room yet, I think probably because you registered on the late side and I didn't have your registration. So I'm going to move you manually into rooms, and I'll do that one at a time. It might take me a moment. It looks like there are about 15 of us that I have to do this for. So let me start by asking, I can see many of your faces on screen. If you are a soprano, would you raise your hand? There's a soprano. Okay, let's see if I can move you into a room. Unassigned. Okay, great. All right. So Nancy Brink, I'm going to move you into the sopranos as soon as I can find you in the list here. There you go. There goes Nancy, hopefully in a moment. Another soprano who's, I don't have a name with your, Rachel. Okay, pardon me, Rachel, we'll get you moved into the sopranos. Any other sopranos? Then we go to altos. Raise your hand if you are an alto. So I'm going to move Ellen. And I'm going to move Mary. Where's Mary? Where's she here? Hold on 1 second. Rita. Why are you not showing up? Oh, Rita Edward. There we go. Slide 2. Alto. Ellen Rosenfield. Alto. Kitty, are you a soprano? Yes. All right. 1 second. Mary Rogier, I need to move to alto. Deborah Center, are you an alto? Is that correct? Okay, coming up. Teresa, are you a tenor? Is that correct? Oops, sorry. 1 second. Let's see, Teresa, what voice are you, Teresa? Pardon me. Oh, I don't hear you. Let's see, raise your hand if you're a tenor. Haha, okay, here we go. And there you go. So I have still Joyce, Louise, Richard Shapiro, and someone else on telephone. Unfortunately, one limitation of the Zoom software is that if you connect it by phone, let's see. Whoops. So let's see, Joyce, I need you to unmute and tell me what voice part you are, Joyce Gilbrick. Or Louise Lee, if you will unmute and tell me your voice part, I can put you in the correct breakout room. And whoever's on telephone with a number ending 9264, if you can unmute and yeah, tell me what voice part you are.
Alto.
Alto, 1 second, here you go. And so I just have 2 people left, Joyce and Louise. I'm going to try to unmute you and see if I can hear what voice parts you are. And Judy Sager. Judy Sager, you get to remind me what voice part you are so I can put you in a breakout room. Judy?
I'll try alto today.
Very good, here you go. So I think that leaves only Joyce and Louise. It may be that you're having trouble unmuting yourself, but you could also, if you have access to the chat, you could send me a chat message to tell me what voice you are. Otherwise, until 8:30, it'll be quiet here while the others are in their sectionals rehearsing. Louise, got you, finally. Sorry, I looked at the chat. Sorry about that. Louise, I'm going to move you into the sopranos. And I think that just leaves Joyce unassigned at the moment. So Joyce, if you can send me a chat or you can unmute your microphone. If you're on a computer, you might have a little microphone icon at the bottom of your screen. And if you click that once, it might turn on the mic. If you're on a phone, it's a little more complicated. I'm not sure for every phone, it's a little bit different.
I have an alto who's dialed in by phone. I'm not sure who that is, but they can't figure out how to mute themselves.
Oh, Lordy.
Is there a way to do that?
I can't do it from, maybe I can join the room. She's an alto? What's her name?
Alto,
Do we know her name?
1516. I don't know. It doesn't show the name. Just shows the
1516.
number.
Okay, I'll go in and mute her. Hold on.
Yeah,
Let me go.
thanks.
Alto, right?
Yes.
Hi, Rosemary. You must have joined late. I'd love to send you to one of the sectionals if you tell me what voice part you are. You may have to unmute your mic to tell me.
I just joined on my computer. It completely froze up, so I was jerry-rigging the cell phone and my regular telephone, and so I just said, let me try this again because it's not working this way. So this time I was successful.
You're successful. So tell me, are you an alto or soprano?
I'm an alto.
I'm going to send you to the alto section then. Here you go.
Thank you.
Yep. Hey, David, did you join late? Do you want to join the bass sectional in progress?
Well, you obviously didn't see the chats. I've been on Ailish's session this entire time,
Oh,
but I decided to drop off of hers and join as a bass. So yeah, throw me in the bass
I'll throw you in
section.
the bass and I'll throw Pam, you're a tenor. I'll throw you back in the tenors, correct?
It's also,
Yep, okay.
it's also a good test that if somebody gets disconnected and comes back in, they don't come back into their section.
Yeah, that
I
would
knew
be would be
Yep,
great
yep,
to get
yep.
back
Okay.
into the
All
center.
right, I'm going to sort you guys out. Hold on one
Okay,
sec.
thanks.
Let's see. How interesting, Pam. It's not showing you as unassigned. Let me see what happens. So you may really have uncovered an interesting gremlin. Let's see. That you were in the tenors. Let me see what the tenor says. Hold on.
Should I hit join breakout room?
Yeah, can you say join breakout? Yeah, hit that.
Okay, join.
So welcome back, everybody. I know it was probably a very short time. This is amazing because normally we would have like many rehearsals to kind of put this all together. And we did it in like 90 minutes or like 60 minutes. But what we're going to try to do is actually read through and sing through the entire movement together and focus on some of the things that we're talking about. With BCCO, our goal is always to go beyond sort of the notes, the rhythms, and the pitches, because inherent in this music, you know, Brahms, as we mentioned at the beginning, is one of the most heartfelt composers. He wore, he wore his heart on his musical notes, right? His entire emotions, even though he couldn't express them to people in real life, were always expressed in his music. And indeed, when he had this love for Clara Schumann, and the two of them obviously loved each other after Robert Schumann had passed away, they actually never could really communicate to each other, only a little bit in letters, even though they destroyed actually most of the letters that they had. But Brahms often would write a piece and then go and drop off the score in front of her door and knock on it and then run away. You know, and then she would get the score, read through it, and then both of their journals were like teenagers. He would say, I was so heartfelt, but I couldn't bear to bring it up to her. And she would say the same thing. She's like, why couldn't he just express in person what I feel in the music? And he just left the score on my doorstep, and like I just feel all of his passion for the music, but you know, not him as a person. And so this music has such depth is his musical feeling. And then for all of us, at least for me too, that this music is very cathartic because it speaks of comfort in the wake of tragedy, in the process of tragedy, as if you're feeling, of course, all the tragedy of having a loved one passed away. And so this is the first of our experimental sessions with the Brahms Requiem, and then, of course, the Tippett of Child of Our Time. But what we're going to do is we're going to try to read together, as all of us all together, and 145 participants right now, the fourth movement of the Brahms, Wie lieblich, the Brahms Requiem. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up the recording, and then I'm going to try to share this. I'm learning, and I'm going to try to share the QuickTime player. Look, it's going to work. And so what I suggest you do is actually, if you have earphones or if you have your speakers, to turn on the volume quite high so that you're enveloped, that you're surrounded by this music, that it is comforting and hugging you as you sing with it. That's the way that I feel it. Especially when you have earphones to be able to do that. So I'm going to share, and I think you can still hear me while I'm sharing this, and we're going to sing this through together as our last thing for this first session of BCCO summer season on the Brahms Requiem. Oh, God, that's such a gorgeous movement. Well, I hope you enjoyed our time here. It's a very interesting experiment we're trying. As I was mentioning to the tenors in our sectional, I feel like that last part, the last coda of the fourth movement, it sounds like Brahms is just saying Gute Nacht, good night to us each time. And so you hear in the orchestra over and over again. Gute Nacht. Gute Nacht, gute Nacht, gute Nacht. So good night to everybody. Hope you had a wonderful time. It's wonderful to see everybody's faces. So I'd love to do, if it's possible, I don't know if you can all unmute, but we've been doing these things in some of the other group chats that I've been doing. I'm going to unmute all and we're going to say goodbye to each other at the same time. So wonderful to have you all here.
Fun.
Bye.
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 Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.